has um, Narelle has been in this field for a couple of years ago, and Narelle was one of my clients when I was doing workplace assessments for Vision Australia and Job Access, and I met Narelle because I was doing her workplace assessment. Um, and we got talking. This is when Narelle, were you working at Energy Queensland?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was. So we were playing around with different systems, and I've got to say that if you ever see what a government can do for inaccessibility, the Queensland government is it. Um, and I'm sure Narelle will probably talk a bit about that. But they're fixing things, and hopefully that process will continue. Um, because part of my role as a workplace assessor was to look at how systems actually work and how they can be rectified to make sure that people can do their tasks in an accessible way. Now, Narelle obviously left there, and it was a conversation. I can't remember when it was exactly, but it was a conversation that Narelle and I had about accessibility, and that's the reason why Narelle and I ended up doing what we're doing now. And so Narelle's got a background in computer science as I have, and we now share the same passion in terms of making systems and websites accessible. We have actually worked on a number of projects together, and Narelle is a wonderful knowledge, a wealth of knowledge of the WCAG, which is what you're going to be talking about, Narelle. And I'll hand over to you because I'm getting a lot of chatter from Jaws at the moment. So I'll hand over to you to talk about the WCAG and how we can use it in our daily activities when it comes to accessibility and maintaining accessible digital access. So all up to you, Narelle.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Look, thank you. Can everyone hear me? I think I've taken myself off mute. So, yeah, if you can just someone give me the thumbs up. Yes, that's working. Thanks. Look, Mark was my workplace assessor. Be 16 years ago now, 15 years ago. Yeah, I've known him a long time. And it's amazing what you think you know, but what you don't really know. And it really comes down to you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know at all. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get into it. But basically, some of you will know WCAG. I've had it like Adam. I know you've done some work in it. A few of you will know parts. Shannon obviously does. But this is just an overview of WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, where it sits in Australia, and a little bit about where it came from. You've heard bits and pieces, and I'm going to try and join it together before we go on to having web developers, digital marketers, and Patrick Lane as the user designer as well. So let's share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? Shannon?
It's just black at the moment. It's loading.
It's come through. So let me tell you a bit about me. I'm a very proud mum. I've got my photo of my 3 sons. Yes, they're all grown men now.
It's
Hopefully
not
on,
quite loaded just yet. Sorry.
yeah. So yeah, I am a very proud mum of 3 sons. I'm a very proud daughter. I'm a very proud sister, very proud auntie, cousin. I've got some great friends. And what I didn't know, Shannon's just coming to check what I've done. No. What I didn't know was that I couldn't see properly. Shannon is just fixing it because I had to turn off my screensaver to try and get it to work properly. Yes. So yeah, what happened to me? Well, let's face it, I grew up in a cattle property, so one of my favourite animals is a cow, a beast. I did everything a normal bush kid did. Went shooting. I learnt to drive from about 8, 9. I've driven Ford Zephyrs, flatbed trucks, 1929 Chevy flatbed truck. I've driven tractors, dozers, was banned from touching the lever that lifted the blade for some reason. I don't know what Dad had a problem with. He wouldn't let me drive the grader. I do things that I love doing. I love walking. I love climbing things. So I've done the Story Bridge in Brisbane twice because I can, because it's fun. I do all types of things. And we're having a bit of a problem with the sharing of the screen. And Shannon's just trying to fix it. So I've done lots of things. And about 18 years ago, 17 years ago, well, actually longer than that, I was born with severe short-sightedness. Mum and Dad didn't know. And being out bush, we were 2 hours from Rocky, a little place called Baralla, but there was a bloke that played footy last night, Corey Oates. He comes from the same town. There's a few other famous people from my town. And I actually grew up with Corey's father, but I didn't know that I couldn't see properly, and Mum and Dad didn't know. So I was about 9 back when I was at school, we had the good old blackboards, and I got shifted to the back because all the naughty boys were put up the front. I was shifted to the back, and of course I couldn't see the board. I thought it was normal. And there was a bit of discussion, and in the end, long story cut short, I went to the optometrist and they said, oh yeah, she's short-sighted. They checked out for other conditions, and the ophthalmologist at the time never told my parents that it was odds on I was going to lose my sight. And so I was about 42 and I was having car accidents and couldn't work out what was going on. And then I realised, oh, you know what? Must have been my new glasses. I was falling over chairs at work. So I was working in IT. By this time, my kids were late primary, early high. The oldest one was grade 8, grade 9. And I don't think it's a day I'll ever forget, because seriously, I went to the optometrist, who happens to be one of my close friends, and we sort of walked in saying, oh, bloody hell, Lisa, glasses aren't working properly. I reckon it's a problem with the glasses. And she said, we're going to do a test called Fields. For those of you that don't know, Fields test what you can see, but as in the area around you, whether you can see underneath you or on the sides or up above, exactly what areas you can see. And she and I, on all the tests, we'd normally sit there and go chat about the kids. Tim's doing this, Pete's doing that, you know. About 10 minutes into it, she was going quieter. And this is a test where you've got to sit a bit like those computer games and press a buzzer when you see a light. Well, I was getting a bit bored, no lights. Oh, Lisa, your kid's doing this weekend, or da-da-da. And she's going quieter. And then she said, I'll be back in a minute. And she came back and she was crying. And I'm going, oh, that's all right, Lisa, what's going on? And, you know, doing the other eye, and the test was, you know, and she stopped the test and she was crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she said her husband had gone to get my husband at the time. And I said, okay. You know, I'm thinking, oh, this is a bit serious here. And she said, actually, you cannot drive again. You're what they term legally blind. What I didn't know was I couldn't see anything around me, which is why I was having car accidents and falling over chairs and all the myriad things that were happening. Why I was constantly standing on my poor cat. My cat and my dog, they were very scared beings unless I was sitting down, but I couldn't work out why. And yeah, that's the day my life changed. And that's not long later, I met Mark Muscat because, as Mark said, he came in as a workplace assessor. And that's when I started to realise what I didn't know. Most of the work I was doing, I'm a coder by trade. I write code, I wrote big databases and all types of things. I had a ball doing it. However, I didn't know what I couldn't see, so my work was suffering. And it came down to the code that I was writing and the tools that I was using were not digitally accessible. By digitally accessible, I was using magnification by then. I couldn't see what was on the sides. I didn't realise what was on the sides or what was at the bottom or the top, because you've got this mindset that you're seeing and you know what you're seeing. And it's like everything, isn't it? You think you know what you're seeing. And then I found WCAG. And what is WCAG? WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. As Mark said, it's developed by the World Wide Web Consortium with the first version released in the late 90s. The World Wide Web Consortium is an international community of people that come together to do the standards, and it's markup language standards, HTML, coding standards, database standards, how we code, all the standards. They realised that the internet and digital content wasn't meeting one of the basic tenets that Tim Berners-Lee set up, which is accessible information for everyone. So they created the Web Accessibility Initiative, which is where the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines came from. And it is implemented everywhere, okay? It is an international system. It is a great set of tools because it is credited with ensuring people like me, people with hearing impairment, with cognitive impairment, physical issues such as arthritis, RSI, hand issues, people with loss of hands, all types of issues, people with ASD, people that are just starting to lose their sight because they're getting older or not hearing properly as they're getting older, people on busy trains, people in dark rooms trying to read menus. It helps us all to read the information, understand it, and make informed decisions. It's really important. The current version is 2.2. That was released in October 23, and it's got some great additions to it. I'm not going into the WCAG in depth. It is too big. And it is covering all aspects of your digital content. It doesn't apply just to the web. It applies to emails. It applies to PDF, Microsoft Word documents. It doesn't matter what it is, it equally applies. Graphics, as Shannon said, Canva, you can use Canva to make accessible documents. It's surprising what you can do, or mostly accessible. One of the things that I always laugh about with WCAG is the naming convention. When I first started in IT back in the 80s, we were just considered nerds, okay? And, we all laughed and said we were nerds. And one of the things that when we first got desktops and everything else, there was a friend and I, and she rang me and she said, I want you to stand up. And this is when ASD was becoming really more known and more diagnosed. She said, stand up. I said, yep. She said, I want you to count all the people with ASD in your area. Now, I've got 2 autistic sons. One's Asperger's and one's ADHD. I've got one abnormal son because he says there's nothing wrong with him. So, what do you say? And Corinne is married to an autistic Asperger's husband. And do you know, we were sitting there and we were counting so many people. And you go, oh, Jamie, oh, yeah, he's a definite. Bob, no. The women were harder to pick. It is very hard to pick a woman with Asperger's. have some different functions, skill sets. Anyway, WCAG, developed by IT, look at the numbering conventions, the naming conventions. There's 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA. Really imaginative. I know the next version has got gold, silver, and platinum. So that, thank gosh, they're making it more imaginative and more current. A is very basic stuff. A is the very, very basic stuff. AA is the next level. Okay, it's the stuff that we say everyone should be doing. AAA, that's really expensive. Okay, we say don't touch AAA unless you've got a lot of money. The thing with it, each principle, so there's 4 principles we're going to, sorry, where am I? There you go. There are another group of tools that were developed, standards were developed same time as UAG, which is user authoring tools, the user agent accessibility guidelines, and the ATAG, which is the authoring tools. So the user agent tools, they're your browsers, anything where you view it, the information on. ATAG, they're your markup languages. They're anything that you use to develop the code, CMSs, whatever it is. The Australian standard, we do have it in Australia, and it's ASEN. So it's ASEN 301549. That's the Australian standard. I apologise. I didn't realise I had the chat screen open. That's what happens when you've got a vision impairment. You don't see things. And it is used everywhere. As I said, the current version is 2.2. It's used in France, Europe, US, New Zealand. New Zealand, actually, their current standard is 2.1, which is Australia is 2.2 standards behind with the WCAG. So the Australian standard is equivalent to WCAG 2, level AA. But it's used everywhere. Different levels. Not every country uses the same version of the WCAG standard. Just doesn't happen. And this is why we're doing what we're doing, to encourage everyone to get on board, encourage everyone to use it, because it is helpful. The WCAG numbering, again, IT people, again, we're very logical people. We're very analytical people. And so with the top one, there's 4 principles. The top principle, in this case, if we're looking at the first one, which is perceivability, is given the number 1. There are guidelines attached to each principle. Each guideline gets a number. So the first one is text alternative. It gets 1.1. The success criteria, which are attached to the guidelines, is 1.1.1. You can't half tell that IT people did this. And I don't think the numbering standard will change. However, the actual levels will change. We have 4 principles with an acronym. And this is where we're really getting into what it means. Everything is there for a reason. Every success criteria is there for a reason. And they've all been attached to a guideline, and the guidelines been attached to principles. That's the structure. So the 4 principles are perceivable, what we see, operable, how we see it, understandable, whether we can understand it, and robust. What tools can it be used? What tools can be used to look at it? There is one more that sits to the side. It's conformance, and that's where I come in. So I'm a digital accessibility auditor, consultant and trainer, and I work in the conformance area, teaching people how to make it conform. The first 4 is where you guys come in, the developers. Anyone that builds any digital content should be looking at these 4 principles. What we're going to do now is, what I'd like to do is everyone turn on their audio, because I'd like to make it a discussion. because my premise that I always work under is everyone actually knows stuff about this. So has everyone got their audio turned on?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. The
Yep.
first thing I want to do with the WCAG principles, before we really get into it, we're going to do two things. One, on the count of three, I want everyone to talk. I don't care what it's about. Doesn't matter. I just want everyone to talk at the same time. And just for a couple of seconds. So 1, 2, 3. Okay,
We're all
I'm
just going to be
talking.
taking that
Beautiful
together.
time.
Yeah, and okay.
My
Okay.
dog's is falling asleep.
Okay, stop.
You can hear everyone.
Okay, everyone stop. How did that feel?
Overwhelming.
Yeah. Could anyone make any sense of it?
And
So we've broken the understandability point of view. We've broken perceivability straight off, haven't we? Because no one could understand it and no one could work out what we were doing. So it's a really interesting thing. And like Patty, I know, has a hearing impairment. I have a severe vision impairment. Alan is dyslexic. Mark is vision impaired and he has some hearing issues. Each of us gets very overwhelmed when we do things, and in different ways. My sons that are ASD at school, you know, when you used to do the comprehension, you had to read a paragraph and answer the questions. My sons could never do it because they could never see the wood from the trees. That is one of the issues WCAG does help to eliminate. So WCAG's all about reducing the frustration, making it enjoyable, a great experience to be on the website, exactly what you guys do, and to communicate. Because after all, accessibility, good accessibility, plus good usability, which encompasses these 4 principles, gives great communication, doesn't it? So let's get into it. First of all, let's look at perceivable. And perceivable has, there we go, 4 guidelines. Okay? And it is, the 4 guidelines looked at text, they look at time-based media, they look at adaptability and distinguishability. Now, this is something that's front of mind for everyone. You know, with text, what's the minimum font size for a website? Someone? Adam, what's the minimum font size for a website? Do you think? What should it be?
You're testing me. Sorry, I was. I think. I think Shannon had it up in one of her slides earlier.
Yeah. I thought
What is it like?
18.
16 and then
No, 18.
18. Okay.
18. But on yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it, Alex. Alex, 18 to 20. However, when you're doing a letter or something, your minimum font size should be 12. Ever read the terms and agreements on a lease or a contract of sale of any type? They're horrible, aren't they? For sighted people, I'll amend this. For sighted people, they're horrible. Ones like Mark and I, we've got it. We read them because our screen readers read them for us. We're looking at, in the text alternatives, we're looking at font, the types of font. Shannon discussed some tests. We're looking at size font, but we're looking at spacing between letters, between words, between lines, between paragraphs. It becomes important. There's a condition where people cannot actually read a straight line. They have eye tracking problems. If you have a bit of space between your lines, it suddenly makes it a bit easier. If you have dyslexia, this is where mirroring and the text font type test cases that Shannon was talking about becomes really important. If you put a letter C and a lowercase l, some people can read it as a letter D, or put the L on the other side, it could be a B. Font type is important. If we're looking at time-based, that becomes really important as well. Who's gone onto a website and suddenly you just get bombarded with music or something's happening, a carousel's spinning? Abby? Caroline? It happens, doesn't it? One of the
Sliders
rules
are the
in-
worst. The sliders
Oh.
and the time that sliders stay up is a really big one for us, even with full vision role. It's just something as a web developer, we try and encourage our clients not to put sliders on.
Yeah. And do you know one of the things it also does? It can cause physical reactions. People can have epileptic fits and other physical reactions to quick moving stuff, time-based. Think about your video, your audio. I'm passionate about captions and correct captions. So once this conference is finished for the day, I've got to sit down. We're going to send it out with AI captions, but it will be correctly captioned. And it will take half an hour, can take 4 hours to caption properly, 3 hours, because we're looking at grammar, punctuation, context, the correct spelling, that the word lines up with the voice as much as possible. The length of the captions on the screen. You should never have more than, if you can get away with it, 32, 34 characters on a line, 2 lines. The way the captions come in, it's important stuff. And Patty will talk more about that later. It's really important stuff. We're talking audio description. For those that don't know, I always say, go on to iView, ABC iView, go and have a look at Muster Dogs. In the audio, there's an audio description panel. If you go there, there's a whole heap of shows that are audio described. It is now a UN, well, actually, Australia was taken to the UN last year by a lady called Laura Henley because there was not enough audio description in Australia. Audio description describes what's going on. The dog is running around the back of the sheep, because a person with vision impairment doesn't know that. Or people with ASD. One of my sons, we were watching something, I'm into murder mysteries and things, and I heard Annika is feeling frustrated. And I heard my son say, oh, thank God, I couldn't work out what she was doing with her face. It provides extra information. That's what time-based media is about. And there's a whole suite of criteria there. The next one is adaptable. And by adaptable, we mean it doesn't matter what tool you're looking at. You should be getting that information. I use a screen reader. So the information should be accessible by me, and I should be getting exactly the same information as you. So if you've got link here, click here to access something, for me, I might just read click here, click here, click here, click here, click here. I will not. And the reason is, in this day and age where we can get hacked, you name it, it's actually a security issue as well. Be concise with what you say in your link names. Don't say click here. You might say Orca website link. Something that gives meaning. Okay? And we're all about adding that extra meaning in. Alternate text is another one, isn't it? Be concise, no more than 100 characters. It's the way you do it all. And then the last one is distinguishable, and that's, I love colour. I am mad on colour, and that's one of the disappointments for me. I can only see major colour now, the really obvious stuff. I was at an expo last week, a network meeting, and the number of people that would have, say, a purple tablecloth and purple biros, I didn't know the biros were there because it all blended in for me. If I've got all dark colours together, I would think they're all the same colour. I cannot tell the difference anymore. Contrast, so distinguishable looks at, again, spacing. It looks at contrast. And one of my pet hates right now is alignment. Look at the sites where it's justified. Anyone ever tried to read a document where the wording is justified? Caroline? Tim? Anyone? Go and try it one day. Because do you know what happens? It actually makes your brain work overtime. The spacing is different between the words and the spacing is different between the letters. So just for a normal person, remember Alan talked about getting the back of the brain, getting the visual cortex to work. Justification makes that hard. So again, if there's something with justification, I'm trying to use my site, I won't read it because it is too hard. Yeah, I heard that, Adam, and exactly, it can be common, but it should never be used. Left, right, or centered. Okay. The next one is operable, and this is another really important one, and there's three guidelines, five. Keyboard accessibility, enough time, seizures and physical reactions, navigable, and input modalities. Now, where we're talking about keyboard accessibility, what we're looking at is people with don't have fine motor skills are an important group of people. Struggling to use a mouse becomes very hard. They can't be accurate with it. They will use a keyboard. I use a keyboard. I do use a mouse occasionally. Sorry, Muscat. I know I keep getting in trouble. I do use a mouse occasionally. However, I use a keyboard. Is there anyone here that when they started work used to use the old VDU and keyboard? We didn't have a mouse. No? That was where we all started. And think about it, one of the original purposes for a typewriter, which is what the keyboard's based on, was so that blind people could write legibly. Two blokes in Italy in different sections, can't remember, it's the late 1600s, early 1700s, both designed a form of typewriter so their blind friends could write legibly. That's where the keyboards come from. That was one of the original purposes. Keyboard accessibility means if you're putting a menu in, you need to be, if you're halfway through that menu, hit the escape key so you can get out. Yeah, it is so important that even down to things can be triggered with not just a mouse on the mouse up event, but on the enter key or using shortcut keys. I mean, we all use Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste if we're in Windows. That is what we're talking about. You can put shortcuts in, however, there's rules in WCAG that talk about how you do it. You can actually incorporate shortcuts in as long as you're not using other things. Screen readers, we use shortcuts left, right, and center. And why for us, one of the things with navigation, I'm not going to, I'll talk about that in a minute. Enough time. You know, you go on to things and you're trying to fill in a form and you don't have enough time. You need to be able to pause it or save the form, which is my preference. Save the form, give them a reference ID so they can come back to it. Again, the reason is people work at different speeds. Some people will take a lot longer to fill in a form than others. It makes a difference. Seizures and physical reactions. I always tell the story. Again, this is telling my age. My eldest son's 31 when I was pregnant with him. And we were just starting, I was working in the Federal Public Service here in Australia, and we just got our very first desktops. And we had Windows 3.1, I think it was, and you know, big monitors and everything else. And I was at work and I was quite pregnant, and someone decided, I'm working in IT, and someone thought it'd be funny to make this something move across the screen. I actually nearly threw up. People have physical reactions to movement. And one of the ones I saw the other day, and it's still being used, and it's an interesting one. And the guys that are web designers, you'll know more about what it's called, and I'd love to know the name of it, where there were very thick lines and there were very pale white, I think, lines in between. So the thick lines were in primary colors and the white lines were very thin. and they caused a physical reaction. Does anyone know what it's called? Parallax or something. It's got a name. But people were actually, it was in a logo. People at this networking meeting were having a physical reaction to it. It's an interesting way our brains work. And that's so important. So the rule is if something flashes more than 3 times in a second, slow it down or get rid of it. That's where problems with carousels come in. You know, when they go really quickly, slow it down. 2 reasons. One, people want to be able to stop it and see what they're looking at. Ensure that people can stop it and see what they're actually seeing. And the second, avoid the physical reactions. It's a really important one. The next one is navigable. And again, this is so important. Shannon talked about the tab key test. And I'm encouraging everyone, do it yourselves. Do the tab key test. See where you end up. And navigable is not just being able to tab through and use the keyboards. Navigable is knowing where you are on the screen. Make sure you put a focus. How many people are on the screen and think, oh, hang on, I've looked away for a minute. Where's the mouse? And that's a constant problem for everyone. So if you're doing a website, make a focus around it. And WordPress has settings. I know there are ways you can do it in pretty well everything. Make sure that focus is set, whether it's a yellow rectangle, contrast, whatever color you're using, that the contrast is there, it's easily found. Not just a straight underline, because people can think that that's a link. So make it obvious, whether it's dashes or something, you know, a couple of pixels. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs to be obvious. That's another form of navigation. The headings become navigation tools. So you never go heading 1, heading 3, like Shannon was saying, heading 1, 2, 3, because it is a navigation tool. People that use assistive technology might say, oh, I'm in a website, go number 1, it'll take me straight to number 1, or go number 2. And it'll say there are 3 heading 2s on the screen. It is a navigation tool. So there are a lot of different navigation tools out there that people are not necessarily aware of. Input modalities. This is my other one that at the moment I'm really on about. How are people going to input the information? One of the ones I saw not long ago, I had to fill in a power of attorney. No, it wasn't a power of attorney. It was, you know, the superannuation forms where you've got to say who's getting your money when you die. And it wasn't, I couldn't do it because the PDF was not accessible for me. PDFs can be made accessible and editable. They can be done. Don't do it in Microsoft Word, because if you use text boxes, those text boxes move. They are inaccessible. But think about how you're putting how you want the information in. Do you want the date in a certain format? Well, put above it. Or you want day, month, year. If it's an email, the format you want it. Be explicit, because it's garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? The more you're explicit and explaining what you want in that field, the more information you can give them, the better the data you're going to get. And that's, you know, you think about the census that we do, every 4 years. I was hearing something about they're planning for the next one now. And for me, we tried to do it online last time and we had to give up. It wasn't great. It did crash. I mean, there was a lot of trouble with it at the time, wasn't there? There was a huge number of issues. And in the end, my ex-husband actually filled it out for us. But next time, you know, I've got friends still working at ABS, and it is going to be, they say, accessible. But think about how you put the information. One of the things that if you do, never use pop-ups. Pop-ups can be very hard. Often in the assistive technology, the focus goes back to the underlying screen and not on the screen. If you're going to use a pop-up, make sure the focus stays on that pop-up. Make sure the X is big enough that people can find how to close it, because we all have that problem too, don't we? Is there any other areas that you can think of so far with perceivability and operability that you can think of? Adam, what's something that for you?
putting me on the spot again.
Yeah, I know. That's because I can't pick everyone's names.
Oh yeah, I always hated having a name that started with the letter A. Look, I don't know if I can add anything here, but
Yeah.
what I can say is it is all coming back to me after doing the training that I mentioned at the start of the
Yeah.
session.
Yeah. What about you, Diana? Things that you're thinking about, can you see that, yeah, you actually do know stuff. It's just getting it all in one area. Caroline? Let's see. Daniela? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I think I need to dig deeper into headings as navigation tool, as you said, and using from H1 to H6 and how that affects SEO.
Yes. Well,
What
actually, SEO loves it because it's logical.
Yes, definitely. I'm just thinking the way I'm using it, I don't think it's necessarily correct. So I would just look into it to sort of cross-reference and see how I can improve the way I'm using it at the moment. And also, new point for me is thinking about carousels. That I didn't know. Because I'm also in one of the current websites using carousel, and you said speed needs to be reduced for less than 3 seconds for images not to rotate with, more often than with higher speed than that. So definitely a few points there that I will have to look into it more and sort of just make sure that I'm doing it the right way.
Yeah. Well, let's go and look at the next one, which is understandable. And there's 3 guidelines: readable, predictable, and input assistance. And readable, we all know what readable is because we're in that business of giving information to people, aren't we? But this really is very explicit. This looks at, if you're going to have words that are not common, add a meaning in. Have a glossary at the bottom of the page or something where they can work out what the meaning is. Put it in brackets. Abbreviations. How many times, okay, I'm a footy mad fan, you'll see NRL. And I know what NRL is, but someone coming from the US would go, what's NRL? Put it, National Rugby League. Expand your abbreviations the first time on a page. Or have the full name with the abbreviations behind. All those little tricks that can make things more readable. Predictable. Oh my gosh, this is such a big one. As Shannon said again, the same thing. Yeah. It's having the same thing in the same spot every time. And one of my issues at the moment is login versus sign in. You go to some websites and you'll see sign in, and you go to others or more, it seems to be login now. But for someone like myself, my first thing when I hit a website I don't know, I tab through it because I need to work out if I've got to log into something, what wording am I looking for? Because I can't do it any other way. But predictability in your websites, in usage of words, the contact us page, predictability in having your labels beside your field, and that if it's first name, have it beside the first name field. Don't just have placeholders as well, because that makes it really hard for someone. A classic story is I knew someone, he's quite OCD, and he's actually a bit of OCD, but he is Asperger's. He filled out this whole form because all the placeholders had gone. He couldn't remember whether he'd filled out everything properly. He started again. And he actually had to write on paper what was meant to be in each field because there was no labels. It's little things like that make the difference to the user experience. The next one, again, is input assistance. Labels. again, look at your being explicit about the format of the information you want. It is such an important thing to make it understandable. And this is where the alternate text comes in again. This is where things like your links and being concise with your naming conventions on links and buttons, and making sure buttons have the alternate text or have that information there that it can be found by screen readers, any assistive technology, puff and sip tools, whatever it is. For those that don't know, puff and sip tools are a tool used by people with no limb movement, and they use either a chin mouse, and they can then swap between Bluetooth, their phones, everything. They run their computers. There's a brilliant guy currently working for Chapter 1 in Disability Employment Services. He's a quadriplegic, and he's got his whole house set up. His kids are not going to be able to get out of the house without him knowing, because he can lock all the windows from his bed. It's brilliant. And he's loving it. Ultimate control. When you're a parent, sometimes you need that. But particularly when they're teens. But, understandable is important. The last one is robust. There's only one guideline. And this is the simple one. And it's a test everyone should do. When you do your website, your Word document, doesn't matter what it is. Same information should be accessible on your phone. Magnified up to 250% is the standard test. Okay, it should be readable, it should be accessible, should be understandable. A kiosk, whatever is used, I use VoiceOver all the time. So I've still got going in my ear, my screen reader. So as I'm moving the screen, it's telling me what's on the screen. I got a bit mixed up before, but I'm very dependent on that to do my work. Same information should be accessible everywhere. If it's not, and it doesn't pass this, that's how business lose sales. Because someone like myself, when I want to find something in particular on a website, I don't use the computer as much. I'll hop on my phone because most websites are inaccessible. I've got a better chance on my phone to work it out than I have on a website. Do I still work it out fully? No. At times, I've got to get other people to help me. And it's even things like business cards. Everyone's business card is on paper, right? Surjit Menon is going to be talking about that later today, and I won't, get into what he's done. But it's thinking about how you present your business cards, your emails, your email signatures, that everyone can access and read it. Because your email signature is generally where you have your phone number, maybe your address, your website. If they're not readable, if the minimum font size is not 12, the spacing's not there, you're missing out. People are missing out. That's that part. The last part is conformance. That's how you can contact me. But what a digital accessibility auditor does, trainer, consultant, and certifier, we go in, we work with designers, we work with developers, to not just teach them how to make it accessible, we do the audits. And we audit against all the success criteria that are underlying for each guideline. We run specific tests. We run it on different browsers. We don't just run it, say, on Chrome. We look at different browsers. We look at different age technologies, an old iPhone, because not everyone has the latest iPhone. Like Alan was talking today about black spots. And even like I live in Brisbane, there's a spot here, which actually is gone now. It used to be a black spot where I could go and stand there with my phone and test. I knew exactly where that spot was. Obviously, there's new tower put in because the black spot's not there now. But it's testing on different types of tools, testing with braille displays, testing with screen readers. We don't test with puff and sip tools because we don't have that knowledge, but it's testing the PDFs. It's testing everything to make sure that success criteria are met. And what I want to do is now just open it up and just have a general discussion where we can all talk about what we think. And I'm going to stop sharing. what we there we go. What we think and what we can do. Yeah, I'm stopping screen sharing. Yeah, there we go. I think I've got it stopped. But that's what I want to do now. So let's look at what we're doing and what we can do. Okay, so Shannon. Oh, Shannon's coming in to fix it again because I can't fix it. So, Mark, what do you think about what we're talking about? Thanks, Shannon.
Was that anywhere else? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
What are your thoughts about WCAG and how the difference it's made to you?
Well, I mean, as I say to people, people say, oh, that, talking about the accessibility of systems and sites and so forth. The WCAG is actually a form of guidelines that have been thoroughly researched. So all disabilities, vision impairment, hearing, neurodiversity, language even has been considered. And I find that if you conform to the majority of the WCAG guidelines, the framework itself will ensure that you cover most of the required information or things that you need for different groups. So I generally think that the WCAG is a well-rounded set of easy to understand guidelines for developing and working with people who develop websites. So for me, it's been around for, well, ever since I did my postgrad.
Yeah, since 1999. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So it's been around, in one way or another. So it's definitely evolved, and it will keep evolving. So it won't be just only for web. There will also be document and digital content included in that. So the emerging side of it's looking pretty interesting. Because it also talks about multimedia.
Virtual reality. They're starting to look at virtual reality
is another aspect. So yeah, that is really exciting stuff.
Yeah. Paddy, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, trying to find the mute button. Yes. Definitely the WCAG guidelines have been an interesting one in my journey in the digital space, because it is something that's very hard to read but quite easy to implement. And it's one of those things that I've had a challenge with trying to communicate to a lot of the teams that I've worked with over the years, and in terms of just the bare minimum that we can do. So looking at, okay, what can we do from an A and AA standard, just to build things one step at a time. I know myself being deaf, I am also an Auslan user, so incorporating sign language videos into websites is actually, for those who don't know, a AAA guideline. So it is a lot more time consuming, very expensive, unfortunately, to implement into websites. But if you want complete accessibility, that's what you have to strive for. So definitely appreciate having the guidelines there, but very interesting navigating the conversations to how to advocate for complete accessibility. So it's definitely come a long way, and I feel like it's got a lot of room for growth in terms of how we communicate these guidelines to the general public.
Abby, what measures do you think we could take to advocate more for WCAG, for the standards?
I feel like talking about it more. I feel like, I mean, I've definitely heard, I think the main thing was the color contrast checker I think is thrown around a lot, but I think those guiding principles, I think I haven't heard been spoken about a lot. And I think in a way they're kind of common sense. Like when you read them out, I'm like, oh, that's so obvious. I mean, in a way they're kind of a part of how everyone perceives things, but breaking it down into that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it is. And I like what you said. It is common sense, isn't it? It's really thinking about how people communicate and in different ways. Yeah. Caroline, what do you think could be done? Caroline Martin. Alex, what do you think can be done?
Yeah, it's to be quite honest, I am very much at the beginnings of my learning journey when it comes to accessibility and digital accessibility. So I don't know if I'm necessarily the right person to ask, but
I'll ask you this way. Can I actually swap it around? I actually think you're the perfect person to ask.
Oh,
because can you see with what we're talking about, can you see that you've already got knowledge of it, but just didn't realize?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think the quote that you had of "you don't know what you don't know" is very, very true. And yeah, I mean, first and foremost, having an understanding of really just what these standards are, and then after that, how to meet those standards is so important. And it's funny, kind of thinking about it, it's a bit like making digital accessibility accessible to people, to writers and web designers and all of that. So I guess, I think it's something where I've already gained so much important knowledge, and I don't know if that's necessarily.
Actually, Alex, you made a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, making digital accessibility accessible to everyone. That's it. Thank you.
Hopefully. That's okay.
No, it was a good point. What about you, Rebecca? Beck, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, I've got a really loud environment at the moment. I'm putting my coffee just to like overwhelm myself. Sorry, what are my thoughts on the standards and like accessibility design?
Yeah, we can only just hear you, Beck.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just.
Sounds like your mic.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll do it.
Daniela. Oh, yeah, Daniela, carpets are being cleaned, are they? Yeah, Daniela, I can understand that being noisy.
I often go to the guidelines and always sort of go back and learn something else. Going back to what Mark said at the beginning, I like also how he said it's much better to incorporate that beginning in your project from the start than trying to sort of implement at the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's another good point there.
And you would have noticed that I said it to put it in your checklists. So if you're like me, when you do project management, you tend to set up lots of checklists for different, parts and components of a project. So sometimes it's better to, and even if you have like a template that you follow, if you put your various parts of the WCAG in that checklist. So when you look at the various principles, the ones in particular, probably the first three, but the robust is actually more of a technical principle, where Narelle's probably understated it. It's actually quite critical because it's all to do with the technical side of your code, etc. That needs to be robust enough to work with different clients and different different platforms, etc. So that's what robust is actually, and I think robust, you'll find, is going to be expanded in newer versions of the WCAG to be quite considerable, because we are dealing with lots of platforms and lots of different APIs, etc. That when you consider it all in the context of your project, these are the things that are going to make or break a lot of projects in the future when it comes to accessibility. So robust is a very vital principle, considering that the first three have had quite a lot of work done over the last 20 or so years. I think there will be a lot more in terms of robust when it comes to technical application of accessibility. So, yeah.
One last thing I want to say before we actually finish, and there's a heap of people I'd love to talk to, but we're running out of time. This doesn't just apply to the web. It does apply to apps, your letters, your flyers, your PDF. As I mentioned, anything that's created as digital content. The next version, they're changing the name to be to the Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're dropping the word web, particularly because people think it only applies to the web. And going along with this is one other thing that really fits in with the perceivability and the operability is your document structure. If your document structure is not right when you go to build it, if you do things like have merged cells or split cells in tables, if you make tables complex, and document structure looks at color and font and all of those things as well, but it really looking at, your tables and your layout and things like that as well. If that's not accessible, and that's the base of anything, nothing's accessible. And I always say to everyone, just remember, get your function right. Whatever you're building, get your function right. Put your form on top. Once you've got your function right, then you put your form on top and make it look great, which is what your skills and where your skills lie. They're definitely not mine. I don't have the site to do it. I did build a DASAT website, and you can see it's clunkier. That's vision impaired. It's a bit harder to do. I did it, and we're not going to change it because you know what? It's saying people with vision impairment can build a website that's accessible. I've got coding in my background, but always get your function right first. It's like anything. If you're going to build a cake, you've got to have the ingredients right first, make the cake, and then put the icing on top the way it looks. That's what we're talking about. The icing's important on a cake, but your function's more important. Does that make sense? Tim?
It does make sense. Yeah. I was just, it's a good sort of analogy. Because, I mean, thinking about some of the stuff that's been discussed, especially around, uniformity, my mind goes to things like some web forms might have, you put your full name in one box and others split your first and surnames and that sort of thing. Which, if you're sort of rushing through and not really paying attention, can be a little bit fiddly.
Yeah. And one last thing, always be aware, you will see, and there are sites out there that like Wix, I've gone and had a bit of a look at it, and Wix does have an accessibility checker. However, it only picks off the low-hanging fruit. It looks at color, contrast, a few things. It doesn't look necessarily at movement, all the things that we've been talking about, keyboard accessibility, all those things. It doesn't. Any of those plugins that you see, and you'll see them, they'll be in the shape, I think it's Shannon, it's a disabled person sign, isn't it? The plugins?
It's usually a body and it hangs off the side.
Yeah, there's a couple of problems with them, and I'm just saying this as a coder, and as a person with disability. The first problem is finding them, because often they're down on the bottom left-hand corner. Well, by the time you've done that, you've been through the whole site anyway. And the second is they cannot ensure complete conformance to WCAG. They just knock off those low-hanging fruit, the contrast, too small a text, alternate text. And the third one, there is one third point actually, they will actually say, oh, you can make the font, the website's bigger, or you can have the screen reader. I was testing on one, playing with one the other day, and I had my screen reader on so I could hear what I was doing. I accidentally triggered the screen reader on that plugin as well. And when Remember at the start we did everyone talking at once? That's what I was hearing. And I just got out of that website and said, yeah, I'm not going back there. I won't, because I triggered that screen reader accidentally, didn't want to do it, but those plugins don't really assist. We've got all the tools we need on our computers. People that are starting on their journey, that's where they get someone like Mark. Mark is an assistive technology trainer, and he's a job access trainer, mentor in that area, consultant, and they get them to come in and they're taught. Someone that's using Puff and Sip tools, all the tools are there. People, Patty, you'd have all the tools you need on your computer and on your phone for your hearing impairment. Those tools are really, the plugins can be a waste of money. But someone that's just losing their sight, things like that, they're good, yeah, but not to change the colour for someone that's colourblind, because their computer's already set up for it, because the tools are already in your computer. Go and have a look. Have a look at your accessibility menu on Windows. It's all there.
I would also imagine that as a graphics designer, they would be really difficult to work with, because you're giving away your creativity.
Shannon?
For the module.
They don't necessarily do that.
Okay,
but yeah, it's more user experience, like, you know, and also accessibility. Like, you're making people do an action when it should just be, you know, there by default.